Hello everyone, I'm your narrator from Grave Hush, and I'm here to help you unwind tonight. I know many of you use these stories to fall asleep, so before we begin, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Also, where in the world are you listening from? And what time is it for you right now? Now, get cozy, take a deep breath, let your body sink into the stillness. It's time to relax and let the story carry you into sleep. Our first story tonight. These kids are always watching me. I remember exactly when it all began, when I first felt like I was being watched. It was a tiring Tuesday, was heading home after a long day at work. I'd been rotting in the office since morning, well into the late afternoon. The only upside, 2 days like this, was that at least the summer heat had died down a bit by the time I left. I was sitting on the subway with 9 stops to go. I couldn't wait to get home to the girls to hug my daughter, Sarah, and enjoy one of Janice's amazing dinners. I was thinking about dinner, sitting on the half-empty train, when I noticed the boy. I remember him like it happened just now. He was holding his mother's hand, getting ready to get off at the next station. His face was flushed. Probably from soccer practice, he was still wearing his jersey. Just a regular school-aged kid. Except for his expression, he was staring at me, but not like a curious child. It was a look I can hardly describe. As if he knew all my secrets. As if he was looking at me with disgust, with judgment. I never considered myself a bad person. I hadn't done anything to deserve a look like that. The blonde boy didn't take his eyes off me. He didn't even blink. It was terrifying. I felt confused, nervous, and exposed. I didn't know where to look, what to do with my hands. I was sweating under his gaze. Thankfully, their stop came, and his mother reminded him. To pay attention, they had to get off. I tried not to look again, but as they walked away on the platform, the boy kept staring, with that same piercing look. He watched me until they disappeared behind the columns. Only then could I breathe again. When I got off the subway, I couldn't think about anything else but the little boy. Why did he look at me like that? Was something on my face? Did he really have something against me? I didn't understand why it had shaken me up so much. I stood at the crosswalk. The light was red. A car waited nearby. Windows rolled down in the summer heat. I was lost in thought when I noticed a teenage girl in the back seat, maybe 14 or 15. The glow from her phone lit up her face in the dim car, and she was staring at me with the same expression as the boy on the subway. My heart almost stopped. I couldn't look away. Her judgmental, disgusted gaze pierced right through me. But she was also moving her mouth, muttering constantly. Her eyes never left me, as if she could see into my soul. Thankfully, the light turned green, and the car drove off. But even as they left, she kept watching me. I was on the verge of breaking down. I just wanted to go home, sit down, eat, sleep. Fucking Tuesdays. When I got home, Janice greeted me cheerfully, but she could tell something was wrong. I blamed it all on work. Didn't say a word about the 2 kids. It was better this way. Maybe I was just hallucinating from exhaustion. My daughter wasn't home. She was spending the night at a friend's place. I didn't even know about it, especially considering she was leaving for camp with the school the next day. I wouldn't see her for a whole week. Janice and I talked a little, just about the usual things, how work was, which bill had arrived, and that a new neighbor had moved into our apartment building, a nice little family. But I was very tired, so I thought it best to just go to bed. In the morning, I headed to work feeling refreshed. Janice wasn't home anymore. She usually went jogging at this time in the summer because the air was still nice. She teaches at a school, so she's off work during the summer break. I wish I could do the same, but the company wouldn't survive half a day without me. After my morning routine, I was waiting for the elevator, and that's when it started again. The new neighbor showed up, a young, pretty woman with her toddler. Son beside her, maybe 4 or 5 years old. The woman greeted me, and I politely returned the greeting. Then she told her son to say hello to the gentleman. That's when I saw it. The kid was staring. I swallowed hard. The woman was talking. I could hear her voice, but I wasn't listening. I just stared nervously at the kid. He just looked at me, judging me, almost angrily, and he was muttering. I could see his little mouth moving while he stared at me with those blue eyes. I just kept staring at him too, like some obsessed maniac, and the kid kept staring back with that same look. I only snapped out of it when his mother picked him up. I looked at her and didn't know what to say. She was giving me a strange look while holding her son close. Finally, she just said the elevator was here, but they had forgotten the boy's hat and were going back to get it. I got into the elevator and, like a robot, pressed the button for the ground floor. As the doors closed, I muttered angrily, "What the fuck is going on?" I decided, given everything that had happened, to take the car instead. Well, that turned out to be a bad idea. No matter where I went, kids were staring at my car. I could see them even just out of the corner of my eye. They were watching me inside the car with their accusing, evil gazes. They were already driving me insane by mid-morning at one intersection. While I was waiting, a school bus pulled up next to me. In every single window, those little bastards were hanging there, staring at me in the car, judging me, full of disgust and all of them muttering. I figured it was best to just cover my face. I was getting more and more tense. Why were they staring? What did they want from me? What were they saying? The honking of the car behind me snapped me out of it. The bus was already far gone, and the honking from behind was getting more and more impatient. Why wasn't I moving? Eventually, I made it to work. Never thought I'd be this happy to see that place. But maybe there wouldn't be any damn kids here. The whole morning passed without incident. Work was piled up, at least 3 unfinished projects were waiting for me, and I also had to review the company's tax matters before the end of the month. Just the usual load of crap, but even here, peace didn't last long. I was rubbing my eyes, tired, trying to focus on work, but thoughts of those kids kept creeping back in. Then I looked up from behind my monitor and saw her, standing at the office entrance, right in my line of sight from my desk, was a little girl, blonde pigtails, wearing a comfy summer dress, freckles on her little face, and she was staring at me. Rage filled me. Seriously, can I not have peace anywhere? I jumped up from my chair and stomped over to the girl. I grabbed her arm maybe a little too roughly and dragged her with me to the break room. From the corner of my eye, I saw my co-workers watching me with confusion, maybe shock, but I didn't care. I just wanted to be left the hell alone. I brought the girl into the office kitchen, stood her in front of the fridge, grabbed her by both little shoulders, and barked at her, "What do you want?" The girl didn't answer. She just kept looking at me with that same weird expression, staring straight into my face, judging, mocking, muttering so softly I couldn't make out a word. I lost it. I shook her by the shoulders and shouted, "What the fuck do you want? What's wrong with you? What do you want from me?" One of my co-workers pulled me back to reality. He touched my shoulder from behind and asked if everything was all right. As soon as I let go of the girl, she took off running. I didn't even know what to say to my co-worker. I didn't know why I was so freaked out anymore. I ended up in my boss's office, where he and a woman from HR had a talk with me. The girl, I shook, turned out to be the daughter of one of the women from accounting. Because of the school break, she had brought her in for the day. Luckily, they said they wouldn't press charges or fire me, but I'd be put on a short forced leave. I sat in my car in the parking lot for a few hours. Maybe. I didn't dare go home. My only comfort was that, at least, I wasn't fired from my job. It paid well, and with all the loans, I needed the money. So I just sat there for a while, mostly with my eyes closed, trying not to think about those damn kids. I didn't understand how the hell does no one else see how these kids are staring at me. On the way home, I didn't care about anything. I saw it was happening again, just like in the morning. Kids walking with their mothers stared at my car and followed me with their eyes. At the playground, I always pass. All the brats were staring out at me, but I didn't cry, acted like I didn't even see them. At home, Janice was watching TV. She was really surprised I came home so early. But she was even more shocked when I told her everything that had been happening to me since. Yesterday, she acted understanding. She always was like that. But I could tell she didn't know what to make of it. In the end, she said maybe it's for the best that I'm on a break. At least we can enjoy each other's company while Sarah isn't home for a few days. I spent 2 whole days at home together, just like before Sarah was born. We just lounged around all day, watched dumb shows, and yes, for the first time in a long time, we made love again. Those 2 days were relaxing. I almost forgot how much I loved being around Janice. On the 3rd day, she convinced me to go out for a short walk with her. I thought I'd try, for her sake. Unfortunately, I didn't get far. The moment we stepped out of our apartment building, there was a little boy eating ice cream on the corner. And the second I appeared on the street, the kid started staring at me. With his messy little face, he glared at me angrily and hatefully. He even stopped eating his ice cream, just stood there muttering something I couldn't understand. I bit my lip nervously. It was infuriating. 2 days had passed, and we were right back where we started. So it wasn't just exhaustion. Janice looked at me strangely, not understanding what was happening. When I told her the kid was staring at me again, she said the boy was just licking his ice cream, his face covered in chocolate, and that he wasn't paying any attention to me at all. We went back inside the apartment. The mood wasn't so light anymore. Janice wanted me to go see a doctor. I didn't agree. I'm not crazy. Something's wrong with the kids. They stare at me. And the way I know I'm not the insane one is because adults don't look at me. Not even the teenagers, just the damn little brats. Janice and I argued a little. I slept in Sarah's room for 2 nights. Then I apologized and agreed to see a doctor. The next day, I went to a psychiatrist. Janice didn't come with me. Since Sarah was coming home today, she had to pick her up from the bus station. The doctor diagnosed me with early-stage paranoid schizophrenia. He gave me a bunch of medications and said I could come to therapy 3 times a week. On the way home, I told Janice everything over the phone, what the doctor had said. That helped me make it home without breaking down or focusing on how many kids were glaring at me in disgust. For a moment, I felt a bit of hope againeth. I followed the instructions properly. Maybe my life could get back to normal, but at home, the crash came again. Because when I stepped through the front door, Sarah didn't run up to hug me with her usual cheerful smile. She just stood there in the entryway, staring at me, muttering. Her sweet little face was angry and full of contempt. I was stunned. I just stared back at her. Janice was watching me from the kitchen with a strange look, so I forced myself to pretend everything was normal to hide the fact that not even my own daughter was an exception to this madness. I walked over to Sarah and hugged her. Her expression didn't change in the slightest. She just watched me and muttered something unintelligible. Then, as if everything were completely normal, I went straight to the bathroom and locked the door. I took my meds and I kept going. To therapy, my doctor prescribed even stronger drugs, and he even gave me the card of a special therapist who used hypnosis to treat delusions. But the visions didn't go away, and I swear on anything they weren't hallucinations. Luckily, at home I didn't see much of Sarah. Janice kept her busy, constantly taking her somewhere or letting her go out with her friends. I simply couldn't handle it when she was home. She kept staring at saw it in the mirror, in the reflection of the TV, from the corner of my eye. I just couldn't take it. Most of the time, I locked myself in the bedroom and just sat there, hunched up. Janice tried to be supportive, but since she didn't see anything unusual, it was hard for her to understand what I was going through. 3 weeks passed. I followed the doctor's instructions to the letter, but there was no improvement. I didn't even go outside. Whenever Sarah came home, I locked myself away like some lunatic, just so I wouldn't have to see her. The medication didn't help. The doctor had prescribed the strongest ones, and I sometimes took even more than I was supposed to just to make the fear go away. But the only effect was that my brain felt like a soaked sock. Most of the day, I just sat in the dim light, half sedated, staring blankly at the TV, so I decided to stop taking the pills instead. I'd try to figure out what the hell was going on. Why do I see the kids like this? I hadn't taken my meds for a few days, but I pretended I was doing better. Even Janice didn't seem suspicious anymore. During the day, I scoured the internet, hoping to find something, some similar story. But nothing. Most of the pages just talked about schizophrenia. But I knew it wasn't that. I was absolutely sure. I even managed to hide the fact that I still saw Sarah that way, at least. Until that night, Janice had gone to bed a few hours earlier and had already fallen asleep. She'd put Sarah to bed before that. I was still up, browsing on my laptop, hoping to find some story similar to mine. But I was feeling incredibly tired, so I decided to go to sleep. I lay next to Janice, in bed, staring at the ceiling. No matter how exhausted I was, I hadn't been able to fall asleep properly for weeks, and tonight was no different. That's when I saw a little girl standing in the bedroom doorway. I couldn't see her face clearly in the dark, but I knew she was staring at me. It was Sarah. She wasn't asleep. She was just standing there. Watching it was probably the lack of sleep, the frustration of endless days of useless searching, or at least that's what I told myself. But I suddenly snapped, furious, back to her room. I chased after her, shouting. I flipped on the light. In her room, she was sitting in her bed, staring at me with that same infuriating, hateful, contemptuous look. I grabbed her little bedside lamp and smashed it full force against the wall. I screamed, "What the hell do you want from me? Why are you staring at me like that?" I've had enough. But she just sat there, completely still glaring at me. Not a single change in her expression, just that quiet, muttering. Her lips moving, but I couldn't understand what she was saying. I just kept smashing whatever I could reach. Janice ran in, yelling that I'd lost my mind, begging me to stop. But I didn't listen. My rage had taken over completely by the time I calmed down. I was sitting on Sarah's bed, panting. The room was wrecked. Sarah and Janice were gone. They'd left me the rand. I didn't blame them. I drank all night. I went down to the store, bought as much booze as I could carry, and drank until I blacked out. I woke up the next day with a horrible hangover. I can't handle alcohol well, and it had been a long time since I last drank. It must have been Sunday. Janice sent me a voice message. She said we needed a break, that I was a danger to Sarah. She'd cried through the whole night. They'd moved in with her mother. It crushed me. I know it was my fault. I should have kept pretending, should have kept up the act that her stare didn't bother me, but it felt like she could see into my soul, like she knew every single thought I had. That day, I just rested. I didn't want to think about anything. Then I was disturbed, again this time not by children. My boss called, asking when I could return to work. They really needed me. I stood there among the wreckage and said, "I'll come in tomorrow." I don't know what pushed me to say that. But that night, I got drunk again. It was just easier that way. I woke up feeling like absolute shit. 1.5 liters of vodka doesn't make for a great dinner. I scraped myself together, threw on my shirt and suit, even put on sunglasses. The light was unbearable. Somehow, I made it down to the street. I'm not proud of it, but I threw up into one of the trash cans. Then I headed toward the subway. I felt awful. The only upside was that, for once, I didn't care about the damn kids staring. At least now they had a reason. I was stumbling. Reeking of booze. I only half remember how I got to the intersection. It wasn't far from my workplace. A crowd was gathered at the crosswalk, waiting for the light to change. I was leaning against the traffic light pole, hungover or maybe still drunk. I don't even know anymore. That's when I heard a kid's voice. I hadn't heard a single child's voice since all this madness began. Just that fucking muttering. Now, just a few words. Might be better. I turned around slowly. A little red-haired boy stood there, staring at me with anger and disgust. His mouth kept moving, still muttering. I couldn't understand a word, and I lost it again. I couldn't stop myself. I grabbed his shoulder and squeezed as hard as I could, started shaking him. "What did you say? Say it again, you little shit. What the fuck did you say?" I screamed, spit flying from my mouth. I didn't give a damn who saw me. Then came the punch. Huge. I hit the ground. My sunglasses flew off, and my lips split open. A massive guy was standing next to the kid. You could tell he didn't like what I'd done. He stepped over and kicked me for maybe 5 more times. Everything was hazy after that. I sat there on the ground for a while, leaning against a fence. Somehow, I dragged myself into work only to be fired on the spot. I tried to talk my way out of it, said I was the one who got attacked, but the stink of alcohol was pouring off me. To be fair, the company was decent enough to give me a solid severance package. From there, it was a straight descent into the abyss. I had no one left, only alcohol. For a while, I tormented myself. Why was this happening to me? What did I do to deserve this? But eventually, I drowned it all in booze. Unfortunately, not even that silenced everything. I just started acting, more and more erratically. I kept calling Janice whenever I was drunk for weeks, until she finally blocked my number. She sent me only one message. She was sorry it had come to this, but I wasn't myself anymore. I took my anger out on the apartment, smashed everything I could get my hands on. Liquor bottles lay scattered everywhere, and I'd stopped caring about hygiene completely. This went on until one morning I woke up in a park. I had no idea how I'd gotten there. Probably went out to buy more booze, then just laid down and passed out. It was the park nearby. We used to go there with Sarah. We feed the ducks. I didn't know what time it was, or even what day. The sun was shining warm and bright, and it hurt my eyes. Even so, I noticed the woman sitting by the pond with her daughter, feeding ducks. But the girl wasn't watching the birds. She was staring at me. That same contemptuous, mocking expression I'd seen so many times before. My booze-soaked mind snapped into aggression again, and I deeply regret what I did next. I walked up to them and started hitting the little girl as hard as I could. The mother tried to stop me, but I grabbed her, too, and just kept punching her with my fists until everything went dark. It only lasted a few moments. Then suddenly, my brain clicked back. The alcohol felt like it evaporated from me. I stood there, beside the beaten bodies of the woman and child, next to the duck pond. Then I did the only thing I could think to do. I ran as fast as I could. I ran home, threw a few things into an old gym bag. I put on a worn-out baseball cap and that ancient denim jacket I used to wear when I was young, grabbed whatever money I had left, and walked away from the apartment. I spent the whole day wandering the city, avoided the main roads, took the metro, road buses, sometimes just walked aimlessly. I didn't even know where I was anymore, but no one came looking for me. Not the police, not the neighbors, not even Janice. I slept on the street, in alleys, underpasses. Sometimes I bought a little alcohol, but I didn't guzzle it like before. I drank just enough to numb the fear. Within weeks, I had become a filthy, reeking homeless man. But at least now the kids had a reason to stare, because they still did, with the same damned look in their eyes. And they still muttered. Every last little bastard just kept muttering. Nonsense. I wasn't trying to find a reason anymore. I didn't even care that much. It was annoying that they stared, but I was a bum, and maybe I'd killed 2 people. I saw myself as a piece of shit too, but honestly, I was getting by okay. I walked the city all day, and when I felt like it, I lay down somewhere and slept, or bought a bit of booze. It was all going pretty well until that fucking intersection, one morning. I was just walking wherever my feet took me, and I ended up at a large intersection. I knew this area. I used to pass through here often on my way home from work. There was already a crowd waiting at the crosswalk for the light to turn green. You always had to wait a long time here. I joined the people, and almost everyone subtly stepped away from me, except for one little girl holding her father's hand. As I stood behind them, the girl turned around and looked back at me over her shoulder, with that same disgusting expression as all the others. And of course, she was muttering. But then the muttering became words, just a few. But I heard them clearly. You should single quote V ... been better. I acted without thinking. I regret my sins. I deserve what's coming to me. I shoved the girl. Hard, she stumbled out onto the road, just as the bus was arriving. All I heard was the screeching of the brakes, but it was too late. Blood splattered across my face. Just like before, my first instinct was to run, but this time I didn't make it. Some nearby people tackled me, held me down on the pavement. Everything became a blur, my mind sinking into the depths. I was barely even there. I saw only one thing. Not far from me stood a little boy staring at me with disgust, with anger, and he was muttering. In court, they declared me insane. I didn't speak. I didn't fight the verdict. Even I no longer believed I was sane. This is where everything had led me. They locked me away in a psychiatric facility. Constant supervision, 24/7. Danger to society, they said. They pumped me full of medication. I was sedated nearly all day. Orderlies watched me constantly, and at least 3 doctors examined me every single day. There was only one good thing about the ward. There were no children. One evening, a new orderly brought me dinner. I always ate in my private isolation cell. The doctors said group settings weren't good for me. The young man was calm. He set the tray down and then leaned against the wall, watching me eat. Dinner was rice, boiled carrots, and some kind of meat. Then he stepped closer. I looked up at him, and my blood turned to ice. He stared at me with contempt and scorn. Panic flooded me. It was happening again. Even through the fog of medication, I felt the fear rising. But this time, ... Maybe I deserved that look. I'm a child-killing lunatic. I'm right where I belong. The man kept staring, now standing almost right beside me. Then he said, maybe you should have been watching the kids. Story 1 ends here, now. Let's begin story 2. Something is slipping. Before I begin, I want to share. Maybe a memory, or maybe a lesson, or maybe just something my brain stitched together out of scraps. When I was a kid, my father bastard that he was once told me, fear is weakness, and weakness is something people use. I've interpreted it differently over the years, but lately it started to mean something else entirely. My name is Derek. I'm 28, freelance writer, diagnosed schizophrenic. I moved into this apartment building a few weeks ago, mostly older tenants, quiet enough. Thought I'd give Reddit a shot. Writing helps sometimes. Reading 2.c when the voices start crowding in those whispery little bastards. With doubts and insults, it's like they hush up when I read. They lean in like kids at a story time. Each shadow in the corner takes a line. Sometimes I even imagine the neurons in my brain flickering back to life as the narrative flows. That was my first week here. Peaceful, familiar . But then things started shifting. I'm not saying it's real. I know what my diagnosis means. But I also know what I saw. Monday, just got back from the hospital, picking up my meds. I tucked the Walgreens bag inside my jacket discreet. No one needs to know. As I was unlocking my door, the one to my left creaked open. Ms. Grace . 80-something. Soft-voiced, melting face. Skin like it was sliding off the bone. But maybe that's just how I see people sometimes. She gave me that smile, cherry red lips on sagging flesh hand, that sweet southern drawl. Oh, there you are, my strong man. Could you help an old lady? Out? I nodded. Sure, Miss Grace. What do you need? Just the trash. My hip's been acting up since the surgery. Bless your heart, I asked. What about your grandson? I thought he was staying with you. Her smile dropped like a curtain, her eyes lowered. The whites disappeared into the shadows under her brow. He's not here no more. The silence after that felt suspended, like something waiting to fall. I nodded again, like I understood. I didn't. Inside her apartment, all the lights were off, except the hallway glow behind me. The place stank like copper, rot, maybe. Ammonia. 3 oversized trash bags sat by the door, leaking something thick and dark. "Mind the mess," she said, but the accent was gone. Her voice sounded wrong. I tried to breathe through my mouth as I grabbed the first bag. It was heavy. Too heavy. The voices in my head, usually cruel, dismissive, different, panicked, pleading. "Get out. She knows you know. We're exposed. You're helping her." I kept my head down, hauled the bags out, focused on the task. When I came back, her drawl had returned, smiling like nothing had changed. "Thank you, sugar. I'll be sure to thank you proper. Sometime." She patted my arm. Her skin felt cold, damp almost. I smiled back, forced, looking forward to it. I stepped inside my apartment, shut the door fast, but the feeling didn't leave. The voices were all screaming, Nauengar, confusion, fear. I reached into my jacket to take my meds. The bag was gone. Shit. Maybe I dropped it. Maybe I left it in Miss Grace's place. I should have gone back, asked. But when I peeked through the curtain, I could still see her silhouette through hers, standing there, motionless. When I opened the blinds, she was gone. Her door was closed. I almost let it go, almost went to bed. But then I saw it, the Walgreens bag, sitting on the windowsill, folded upright, mocking me. Tuesday I didn't confront Miss Grace that morning. Even though I needed those pills, something in me said not to bother her. Maybe I could get a refill. Maybe it wasn't worth it. Or maybe part of me just didn't want to find out what I might have seen. I stayed inside, called Dr. Sharpen, my therapist, and told him about what happened. He listened, calm as ever, and explained it away. Said I was helping an elderly woman with chores, and that my condition may have distorted the details. I wanted to believe that. I really did. But even as I sat there, nodding on the phone, I could still feel the weight of those trash bags in my hands. Still smell that coppery, syrupy rot. Still hear her voice shift. By afternoon, I decided I'd face her. Just grab the Walgreens bag from her window and be done with it. I knocked on her door just once. It creaked open before I could raise my hand again. I told myself that was good, less talking, no need to linger. I stepped in fast, eyes on the bag still sitting on her windowsill like it had never moved. Then I heard her voice from behind the door. "Oh, you're back. I was just about to ask if you needed that little bag." I turned. She was hiding behind the open door, only half her face showing, one wide eye peeking out, and a smile that didn't quite fit. Yeah, I started. I saw it yesterday. Figured I dropped it, and the door was. She cut me off, her grin widening to wide, her features warping like a painting in motion. "You know it's rude to enter someone's home without being properly invited." Her tone was sweet, but something in it crawled up my spine. "I'll keep that in mind, Ms. Grace. Sorry, didn't mean to intrude." Sweat rolled down my back. My head was buzzing. Was it the lack of meds, or something else entirely? "Well, go ahead, take them." I moved slowly to the window, every step feeling watched. I reached for the bag, trying not to look at her, but I could feel her gaze digging into my skin. We locked eyes as I slipped the bag into my jacket. "I appreciate you being calm about this," I muttered. My voice shook. "Sorry again. Was I scared? I couldn't let her see that." She smiled, but her eyes darkened, no whites, just pooling black, like tunnels looking straight through me. "It's okay," she said softly. "We all make mistakes, every now and then. Have a good night, Sonny, Sonny." That was her grandson, wasn't it? I didn't ask. I just nodded and backed out, then turned and bolted the second I hit the hallway. My feet ran before my thoughts could back. Back in my apartment, I locked the door behind me and stood there, frozen that the voices were louder now. "She knows you saw, she's coming. You crossed the line." I tore open the bag and popped. The pills, desperate for silence. But the paranoia didn't fade this time. It didn't feel like it was in my head. It felt around me, heavy, present, like something had come back with me. I must have blacked out. When I woke, I was on the floor, pills scattered like breadcrumbs, my heart pounding in my ears. But the voices were gone. That should have been a good sign. So why did I still feel like I wasn't alone? Wednesday, today was. Quiet after cleaning. Up the mess from last night and organizing my pills, things felt still again. I even got back into my routine a bit, but I couldn't shake what happened with Ms. Grace. Her voice, that door, that word, Sonny. I kept replaying Dr. Sharpen's voice in my head. "It's all in your mind, Derek. Maybe he's right. Hell, maybe my parents were right too. They've been telling me for years to get a support animal. I've always brushed it off, but now I don't know. My brain could use all the help it can get." So I started doing some research. I wasn't really expecting a discount or miracle price, but I figured worst case I could just adopt a dog from the shelter and train it myself. That's what I did. I walked down to one of the smaller, more overlooked shelters nearby. At first, I had my eye on a basset hound or a bloodhound, something with big ears and soulful eyes. But then I saw her. She stood out immediately, massive, silent, unbothered. A black Tibetan mastiff, matted and unkempt, fur like tangled yarn or worn dreadlocks. She looked like a bear in hibernation. Calm, still, kindness. Something about her felt familiar. Like me, she didn't belong to the world around her. I adopted her on the spot, brought her home, gave her a bath she barely reacted, and signed her up for those specialized therapy dog classes. She hasn't barked once. She just exists, moves only when she wants to. Sleeps a lot, but when she lays by my feet, the chaos dims. I named her Cleo. There's something about her presence, anchoring for the first time in a long while. I didn't feel alone in the room. I mean, I've always been alone, but there's a difference between being alone and feeling it. I come from a big family, 8 of us, and somehow I was always the background noise. The second child, the quiet one. The one who made too much eye contact and too little conversation. Growing up in a house like that, let's just say dysfunction was the wallpaper I used. To wonder why I wasn't close to anyone in my family. But now I realize every time I reached out, they reminded me why I shouldn't. The same toxic patterns repeated, like a looped audio file with static in all the wrong places. And maybe my mind's not wired like theirs. I don't see things as they do. I think in parables, symbols, patterns, not cause and effect. The point is, I know I'm crazy. Maybe lucid at times, maybe not. But that doesn't mean I deserve to be treated like a patient who's already failed treatment, or a prisoner serving time for having a brain that bends a little differently. Reality doesn't crack because someone's weak. It breaks when it's twisted too many times, when words don't mean what they used to, when smiles are masks, and no one explains the rules. My family was like a broken game of telephone. After a while, I stopped playing, started talking to myself instead. But clearly, even that has its consequences. Anyway, just rambling. I'm signing Cleo up for her first session tomorrow. She's asleep right now, curled up like a rug beside the door. I think she's already helping. Maybe tomorrow will be better. Thursday after, our morning walk and finishing up Cleo's first specialized training session, not to mention a few errands we finally headed back to the apartment. The instructor was kind, helpful even. She complimented how well-mannered Cleo was, surprised by how naturally she followed cues. It's like she's done this before, she said with a smile and that classic Valley Girl accent. If she stares at what you're staring at, it's real. If she looks at you during an episode, then it's probably just in your head. I nodded. I know I should feel proud, but there was something about how cheerful she sounded that rubbed me the wrong way. I wanted to tell her to calm the hell down, but I just smiled and thanked her instead. I went ahead and signed Cleo up for 2 weeks of follow-up sessions, just to get her documented and official, I guess. I don't really care about the paperwork. I just like having her around. Someone who gets me, even if that someone has pause. We hadn't seen Miss Grace in 2 days, probably for the best. After everything, I needed time to breathe. But then, the building started feeling off. Again, as Cleo and I walked down the hallway toward our place, I realized we were looping, walking in circles. No door numbers, no signs. Nothing looked familiar anymore. Had I gone to the wrong floor? I turned around and headed back to the elevator. Pressed the button up or down, I wasn't even sure. The doors opened and the display read, Floor 9, that can't be right. The building only has 4 floors. I live on the top 4, F. I know this. I know this. Cleo noticed the shift in my mood. She looked at me with that grounding stare, like she was waiting for me to recalibrate. I took a breath and pressed for the elevator opened again. Same hallway. But now there were no doors at all. Just a long corridor, bare white walls, paint peeling at the corners. No sound but the hum of dead air. I stood there, frozen, but Cleo wasn't. She pulled the leash forward, tugging me out of the elevator like she'd made the decision for both of us. The hallway felt sterile and wrong. Like the back of a corporate office, they never finished. Cleo walked with a tired, deliberate pace, like this wasn't the first time she'd done this, like she was already sick of my spiral. I hope you know what you're doing, I muttered to her. She stopped, stared at the wall, then looked back at me, like she was expecting something. And then, without a sound, Ms. Grace appeared. I blinked, and she was just there, standing in front of us, like she'd stepped out of the wallpaper. Even Cleo jolted, her stance shifting into a guarded, alert posture. Jesus, I shouted, nearly swallowing my own heart. Ms. Grace just stood there, unfazed, or worse, amused. You always use the Lord's name in that manner, she said, her tone playful, almost teasing. But something in her posture was wrong. Something leaned too far in. Cleo planted herself between us, eyes locked on Miss Grace. Her face was neutral, but her tail stiffened. Those black, soulless eyes from before were gone, but the energy she gave off still stirred every voice in my head into a quiet scream. She knows you saw. She's hiding something. She's coming for you. That's a nice dog, she said, voice syrupy and slow. Is it a boy or girl? Eshi, I began. Does she bite? She interrupted, already reaching toward Cleo. That's when Cleo lost it. She barked, snarled, and lunged with a force I didn't know she had. If I wasn't 6 feet 0 inches and 225 pounds, she might have pulled me clean off my feet. Ciclio, down, down, girl, I yelled, straining to hold her back. Ms. Grace recoiled, but her face didn't match her voice. Her body flinched, but her expression didn't show fear. It showed challenge, like she'd been waiting for this. Goodness, get that thing under control, she snapped. But even then, her words felt rehearsed, like a line she was reciting out of obligation, you know. She added, turning to go, "You really shouldn't keep that thing in such a cramped apartment." Then she disappeared into her unit, slammed the door. Cleo and I rushed back into ours. I pulled her inside and bolted the lock. She stood there for a long time, guarding the door, tail low, hackles slightly raised. She's never acted like that. Not with the trainer, the cashier, the people at the dog park. No one, only Ms. Grace. She knows you know. She's coming for you. She always does. The voices whispered on loop, like a warning or a countdown. Cleo wouldn't leave the door, just stood there, still, watching. It took forever to convince her to lie down. And when she finally did, it was right next to me, pressed against my side like a shield. Am I making her as paranoid as me? Or is there actually something going on? I took my meds, tried to clear my head, tried to focus. The voices are quieter now, but not gone. Writing this helps. A little, like I'm debating with myself whether these things are real or just. In my head, hell, maybe they're both. Friday, I couldn't sleep last night. I think I woke up every 2 hours, sometimes gasping, sometimes drenched in sweat, sometimes unsure if I'd ever fallen asleep to begin with. Cleo stayed by me through most of it, her big body curled against my legs like a living anchor. But even she has limits. At some point, she rolled over with a soft grunt and gave me that look, the one that says, "Figure it out, man." By the first sign of daylight, I decided I'd had enough lying around. I needed to walk, to clear the static, to piece my head back together with fresh air. I ignored most of the calls on my phone junk family. Some unknown number that kept calling around 3 a.m., but one voicemail stuck out. "Hello, Derek. I was calling to confirm your appointment. Tomorrow morning at 12:30. If you'd like to reschedule, that's fine, just return my call. Otherwise, I'll see you in my office at 12:30. And remember, take your medication, Dr. Sharpen." Of course, I forgot about that appointment, and I hadn't mentioned Cleo to him yet. I wasn't sure if he'd even approve. Still, I couldn't just leave her here alone. Not after yesterday, not after the elevator, not after Miss Grace. So I figured I'd take her with me. Simple enough. We left the apartment and headed down the hallway. That same hallway I've walked a dozen times now. The same peeling paint, the same faded carpet that smells like mold and copper and old soap. But today, it felt too calm. You ever feel that stillness? The kind that settles just before something terrible happens. That's what the air felt like in the building today. Like it was waiting. I closed my eyes just before we stepped outside. Just to breathe, reset, feel that first hit of crisp morning air and shake this crawling sense of pressure. But when I opened my eyes, we were back on the 4th floor, standing at the threshold of my apartment. I froze. Cleo looked up at me, tilted her head. That grounding stare again, like she was checking me or like I was the one acting strange. Maybe I pressed the wrong elevator button. Maybe I walked back up out of habit. I tried again, pushed the button. Elevator down, lobby, deep breath, step out, back on the 4th floor, same place, same spot. Again and again. I must have tried it 4 times. And every single time, we ended up right back where we started. The threshold of my door. The hall swallowing. Me like a bad joke on repeat. Cleo started to sense something. I could tell. She sniffed the doorway, pawed at the edge like something was under it. She whimpered. That sound cut through me. She never whimpers, and then she looked up at me, which meant it was in my head. Right, that's what the trainer said. If she looks at you, it's internal. But this time, her stare didn't feel like correction. It felt like comfort, reassurance, pity. I closed the door and sat on the floor, dialing Dr. Sharpen's number. Hey, I might have to reschedule our appointment, I said, trying to keep my voice level, like I wasn't unraveling at the seams. Okay, he replied. Too quick, too neutral. Is everything all right? Yeah, just can't seem to get out of bed right now. I walked toward the kitchen while Cleo sat in the middle of the room, eyes still locked on the door. You know, I could do a home visit, he offered, calm and precise. If that's easier. No, it's fine. I'm okay. I just need some rest. There was a pause, long enough for the silence to feel loaded. The pills aren't working, are they? The voices began to hum, low at first, like static bleeding through my skull. Then clearer. He knows. They know. She's coming. Useless. Run. You said they take a few days to adjust, I muttered, trying to sound casual. My hands trembled as I gripped the countertop. The world felt uneven. Right. That's true, he said. But now, his voice felt sharp, like a scalpel. But if things worsen, you'll come to me. Yes, I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. I tried to answer, but my throat felt dry. Oh, of course, I finally said. I will. I hung up. I could have told him everything. Should have, but something inside me screamed not to. Like he was waiting for me to say the wrong thing. Like he wanted me to confess something I didn't understand yet. But what was I going to say? That I'm trapped inside a 4-story apartment building that somehow has a 9th floor. That I walk out the elevator only to reappear at my own front door. That my dog may be the only creature in the building who knows I'm not insane. Yeah, I'd be institutionalized by morning. I'm a grown man. I should be able to handle my own mind, my own body. But every time I reach for the world outside, it swallows me whole and spits me back out in the same goddamn hallway. Maybe that's why I'm writing this dot, to trace a path, to figure out what's real, to prove I'm not just pacing a cage inside my own skull. Cleo and I stood at the threshold of the door again, staring at it like it might answer us, might tell us what the hell we're supposed to do. And the voices, they didn't whisper anymore. They sang a twisted, looping chorus. She's coming. Hide. She knows she's coming. They coiled around my mind like vines, a macabre melody that warped my thoughts into grotesque shapes, like static. Images glitching across a dying screen. I felt like a prisoner again. In my body, in this building, in my mind. Cleo missed her class today. We both did, and whatever's happening doesn't want me to leave. Or maybe it's me that doesn't want to. I don't even know anymore. I'm going to take my meds and try to sleep. Try top Sunday. I know I'm not crazy. I know I'm not. I couldn't sleep at all this weekend. Every time I closed my eyes, It felt like something just outside my awareness was whispering, crawling, waiting. Not a sound I could hear more, like a pressure behind my teeth. A thought that wasn't mine. I started drawing a map. Cleo has been helping me, she'd guide. I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me back up. You probably noticed I skipped Saturday. That was on purpose. And I have a completely rational explanation for it. I don't remember it. Not in the way people forget their keys or what they had for lunch. I mean nothing. Just a black hole where 24 hours used to be. And I know what you're thinking. Schizophrenia, dissociation, hallucination, sleep deprivation. Sure, fair. But I have proof. I've been keeping a notebook every hour, writing what I see, what I hear, even how many times Cleo blinks. And when I flipped back through, my entries Saturday is blank, not skipped, not torn out, just never written, like the day wrote itself and then deleted me from it. Anyway, it's Sunday now, and whatever this building is, it doesn't want me to leave. I've tried. Dozens of times. Elevators don't work. Stairs all lead to floor 4. Even the fire escape drops me at my own goddamn door like it's some kind of cosmic joke. So Cleo and I figured, fine. If we can't go down, let's go up. There's always a roof, right? Wrong. The top floor isn't a rooftop. It's a courtyard. Walled in with rusted iron fences and broken concrete planters. No sky, no sound. Just an empty pit pretending to be open air. And it gets worse. Every 5 floors, there's another courtyard. Same design, but older, more decayed, more off. As if the building keeps building on itself, but forgetting how it's supposed to. Look, the air changes, too. At first it was just cold, then metallic, then thick, heavy, like breathing through wet cloth, soaked in vinegar and old pennies. I tried the basement, locked. You need the janitor's key, and I haven't seen that. Man, in over a week, if he even exists. Cleo started growling at the stairwells, refuses to go near them now. Like she knows they lead nowhere. I guess what I'm saying is, we're trapped, so now I'm mapping it. Floor by floor, stair by stair, hallway by hallway. Cleo stays close. She looks at me like I dragged her into Hellland. Maybe I did, but she's still here, still following. I used to think it was just Ms. Grace, that she was the root, the ghost, the parasite. But this place, this thing, it breathes, and now it knows that I know. It's like some unseen. I finally blinked and noticed I was paying attention. Is this a test, a breakdown, or have I finally caught up to reality? Either way, I've come full circle. I want to be back in my apartment. At least there, the madness was quieter, contained. But now, even that space feels smaller. It's like the further I travel into this building, the more it shrinks behind me. Like the walls contract every time I leave, trying to keep me from ever going back, trying to force me forward. Cleo sees it too. I know she does. She's not looking at me anymore. She's looking with me. At the walls, at the shadows, at things I only catch from the corner of my vision. But then again, I am the one with the condition. So maybe I'm just projecting. Or maybe she's part of this too. Hell, maybe she's my mind trying to stabilize itself. A hallucination of a hallucination. I don't know. After that last phone call with Dr. Sharpen, I shut down completely, turned my phone to airplane mode, closed my laptop. No TV, no internet, no people, just me and Cleo. and this prison. But I need to document this. Need to write it down while I still remember the shape of my thoughts. Because something is happening. Something is building. If I disappear, Agunai, want someone to know it wasn't because I gave up. It's because this place took me. So I packed chargers, flashlight, snacks, batteries, journal, extra pens. Water Cleo stood by the door while I loaded up my backpack like I was prepping for some backwoods hiking trip. She stared at the threshold. No fear now, just readiness. Maybe I'm ridiculous. Maybe I'll spend the next 12 hours wandering hallways and end up right. Back in my bathtub, muttering into a shampoo bottle. But if this is all in my head, then fine. Let me be the lunatic in tactical gear, wandering his own. Hallucination, at least. I'll know I tried. But if it's not, then I need to find whatever this is. Whatever is watching me. Cleo knew it too. She nudged the door. One slow breath. We stepped through together. Story 2 ends here. Now, we drift into Story 3. This story is based on something that really happened to me and my cousin here in Japan, near Nikko. I'm not sure how to explain it. Some parts still feel like a dream. I'm just sharing this because it's something that stayed with me, and maybe some of you will find it as strange and unsettling as I do. Sorry if it's a bit long, but I wanted to tell everything clearly. It began on a cold winter morning, the kind where the sky still clings to the night long after the sun is supposed to rise. My cousin and I had decided, on a whim, to go on a quick road trip. To Nikko. We live in Tochigi, the city area, where life is a little faster, a little louder. Our whole family lives here too, along with other relatives, all of us tied to Japan by blood. Even though I was born elsewhere, Japan has always felt more like home, especially Tochigi, especially the roads that wind through it. Most people know Tochigi because of Nikko, the historic shrines, the mountain air, the breathtaking scenery, and it's true. Nikko is beautiful, almost like something out of an old storybook. No matter how many times you visit, the place still feels surreal, like the land itself remembers something older than any of us. To get there from where we live takes time, around 2 hours, depending on the traffic. But I never mind the long drive. Actually, I love it. There's something comforting about the journey, the changing scenery, the silence between mountain tunnels, the way the trees seem to get older the deeper you go. Road trips are my escape, even when I'm not running away from anything in particular. That morning, we decided to go to the Lake Chuzengi area. The plan was simple, just a quiet winter trip before the snow got worse. We left early, around 6 a.m. The sky was still dark, painted in shades of blue and ash. The kind of dark that makes you feel like the world hasn't fully woken up yet. I remember we stopped at a 7-Eleven on the outskirts, the last one before the roads started turning, narrow and forested. We grabbed coffee, snacks, and laughed about something stupid. Everything felt normal, peaceful even. The road ahead still had plenty of cars. We weren't alone, but that was before we entered the mountain. There's only one main road that leads into that part of Nikko. It cuts across mountains, winding up and down like a spine. Sharp curves, steep climbs, long drops hidden behind guardrails. For most people, it might feel dangerous, especially in winter. But I loved it, the thrill of it, the way you could feel the pressure in your ears change as you climbed higher. The trees on both sides were tall, bare, and skeletal. It looked like they were reaching for something above the mist. I was using navigation that day, the one from Google Maps, connected by CarPlay. As much as I love going on road trips, I'm horrible at remembering directions. I rely on my phone a lot, too much probably. I had memorized the general route to Lake Chuzengi, but somewhere along the way, it started to feel unfamiliar. The trees looked taller, the shadows heavier, the turns sharper. My cousin and I blamed the navigation. It has this annoying habit of rerouting us for faster alternatives, which usually means less traveled roads, narrower paths, and places that look like no one's driven through them in years. That's exactly what happened. We noticed there were no cars. Not ahead of us, not behind. It was like we had quietly slipped off the map, like the world had decided we should be alone for a while. But weirdly, we didn't feel scared at that point. Not yet. We actually loved it. The solitude, the cold, air rushing through the open windows, and the familiar voice of Taylor Swift blasting on full volume. It made the detour feel like part of the adventure, until it didn't. All of a sudden, the music just stopped, not faded, not paused, just gone, as if someone had taken a blade and sliced the sound out of the air. I kept driving, slowing down a little as we noticed something strange up ahead. The road was still surrounded by trees, but now there were houses, traditional Japanese ones, old, wooden, with tiled roofs and shoji doors. Some had faded cloth banners hanging, possibly old shops or tiny restaurants. A few looked like they hadn't been touched in decades. The wood was weathered grey, windows covered in grime, no lights, no signs of life, just silence. Why did you stop the music? My cousin asked. I didn't, I said. I thought you did. We both looked down at the navigation screen. It still showed the song playing. I checked my phone, same thing. Music was supposedly playing both on the phone and through the car, but there was no sound. Nothing. That's when I really started to notice the quiet. Not the good kind, not the peaceful hush of being deep in nature. No, this silence was wrong. It felt sharp, like it had edges, like it was listening to us. I slowed to about 30 kilometers per hour, suddenly unsure of where we were. Every house we passed looked empty, but not in a normal, peaceful way. More like they had been abandoned in a hurry. One house had its front door slightly open, a rusted bicycle in front, completely still. Another had faded curtains fluttering, even though there was no wind. We passed a restaurant with a broken sign and rotting lanterns still hanging outside. My cousin and I didn't say anything. For a while, we both just looked. Our hearts started to beat in that silent panic, the kind where your body knows something is wrong before your brain catches up. I remember thinking, this place looks like it used to be full of life. What happened here? Then for just a second, I thought I saw something move behind one of the sliding doors, something that was watching us. I kept driving, hands tightening around the steering wheel. The road wasn't that narrow, but it felt like it was closing in on us, like the trees and abandoned houses were slowly leaning closer. I glanced at the navigation again. It was still working, calmly guiding us forward with that robotic voice. But something about it felt off. The route line was flickering, just a little, like static on an old TV. I thought maybe it was the cold messing with the signal or the mountains affecting reception. But then turn left in 300 meters, the voice said. There was no left. We were in the middle of a straight road, trees on both sides. No side road, no sign, not even a clearing. I looked at my cousin. Did you see a left turn? She shook her head, eyes wide. No. And it said that earlier too, like twice. I slowed down even more. 25 kilometers per hour, then 20. Turn left, the voice repeated, this time a little sharper, almost impatient. We both stared at the screen. The map was showing a turn that didn't exist. Just a floating road line going directly into the trees. This is weird, I whispered. Should we turn around? But the road behind us felt even darker now, like something was waiting back there, so I kept going. The mini village stretched, on longer than it should have. The houses were repeating. I swear we passed the same open door, the same red curtain, the same rusted lantern at least 3 times. At first, I thought it was just my mind playing tricks. But even my cousin noticed. Wait, she said slowly. Didn't we pass that restaurant already? I looked in the rearview mirror. The road behind us was completely black. No houses, no light, just an empty stretch of trees, swallowing everything. Then the navigation glitched. The screen blinked once, twice, then turned completely white before restarting itself. The music that had been missing this whole time suddenly played one loud, high-pitched screech through the car speakers, like feedback from a microphone. We both screamed. I nearly swerved off the road, and then it was quiet again. The navigation rebooted. The screen now showed a completely different map, one that didn't match where we were supposed to be. It had no labels, just a thin grey road surrounded by black. No lake, no mountains, no signs. I finally pulled over, and that's when we heard. It steps stopped crunching slowly on the frost-covered ground, just beyond the car. But when we looked, there was no one, just the houses, still quiet and watching. I didn't want to stay parked for long, but my hands were shaking on the wheel. What was that? My cousin whispered, not even looking at me. Her eyes were locked on the fogging windshield, like she expected a face to appear behind it. Any second, I don't know, I said, trying to sound calm, but my voice cracked. We waited for a few more seconds. Crunch, another slow step. Definitely on the frost. Not a branch falling, not an animal. This was deliberate. Human, or at least, it sounded human. I hit the door lock button, since my car is automatically unlocked. If I put it in parking mode, we both turned to look. Out the windows, there was nothing. Just the edge of the village, where the old houses lined both sides of the road. No movement, no lights, just the heavy stillness pressing against the car. Let's go, my cousin said. Her voice was firm now. I don't care where, just drive, I agreed. I didn't need convincing. I slowly pulled the car back onto the road, careful not to go too fast in case something ran out in front of us. I've seen enough horror movies to know that's when it happens. We followed the road, or at least what we thought was still the road. The navigation had stopped working entirely, frozen on that blank map with a moving blue dot going nowhere. Our phones lost signal, completely no GPS. No bars. Just that creepy floating dot inching forward in a void. Then we passed another house, the exact same one. The red curtain, the tilted sign, the bicycle. I stopped the car again. My heart dropped. No. I whispered, we're looping. My cousin's breathing got louder, faster. We didn't turn. How can we be looping? I don't know. I checked the rear view again. The road behind us looked different now, not darker, just ... wrong. The trees were too close. The snow looked untouched, like we'd never driven through, like we hadn't been here before at all. And then, I swear to God, the lights in one of the houses flickered on, just for a second. A dim, yellow glow behind the rice paper sliding doors. Faint, but enough to make both of us gasp. I hit the gas. I didn't care about the road anymore. I just drove, fast. I ignored the navvy, ignored the map, ignored everything. We passed the same houses again, and then something new. A tunnel, old, unlit, the kind that looks like it's been forgotten for years. There were vines growing round the entrance, ice forming along the top. The sign above it was rusted and unreadable, but I didn't care. We entered it. The second we passed through the darkness, the navigation let out a beep, just one. The screen flickered back to life. The song started playing again, a different one this time. Some upbeat Taylor Swift chorus breaking through the eerie silence like sunlight. I wanted to cry hearing it. The tunnel wasn't long when we came. Out the other side, everything looked normal. Blue sky peeking through the clouds. Other cars on the road, a bus up ahead. I looked at my cousin. She was pale, holding onto her seatbelt like a lifeline. Was that real? She asked quietly. I didn't know how to answer. We didn't talk much for the rest of the drive, but when we finally arrived at the lake and stopped to breathe, I checked the map history on my phone. There was no record of the route we took. No signs of a village. No tunnel. Nothing. Just a gap in the timeline. Like we were never there. We didn't tell anyone at first. Maybe because we couldn't explain it, or maybe because part of us didn't want to believe it happened. But it did. Everything. The sudden silence, the glitched navigation, the quiet abandoned village tucked away in the mountains of Nico. The houses that looked too old and too still. The footsteps, that strange looping road, and the tunnel that wasn't. On any map, what makes it worse is that we've never been able to find it again. My cousin and I have gone back to Nico so many times. Sometimes with family, sometimes just the two of us. I've even gone alone, on days I thought maybe I'd feel something, or the GPS would. Mess up again? I've tried taking random turns, accepting strange reroutes, even checking offline maps, just in case. But that village, that road gone, it's like it never existed. And yet, I know it did. We were there, we felt it, and yet, sometimes, when I'm driving alone on quiet mountain roads, the car radio glitches, a sudden crackle, a flash of static dot, then, just for a moment, the GPS softly says, turn left. It's like a whisper from that lost village, calling me back no matter how many times I've tried to forget. That voice lingers, as if the place is still there, waiting for me to find it again. Story 3 ends here, now. Listen closely to story 4. The man on my doorbell camera gets closer each night, and he's wearing the shirt my father was cremated in. The man on my Ring camera doesn't move or speak, but he's been getting closer every night. I was only 11 when my dad died. He had cancer. It really took a toll on him. He fought his heart out for us, but truly, he never had a chance. I don't. Begin with this to try and poke at your sympathy bone, but because it is the only real context needed for you to understand why this past week has been so disturbing. I moved out of my family home about a year ago, and I've really enjoyed living on my own since. I used to think that I had a touch of anxiety when it came to living alone, but now I'm not sure that I'd ever actually even felt real anxiety or fear until this week. The first instance was on Tuesday. For the sake of brevity, it was Tuesday, July 1st, day that has no special meaning to me, my dad, or anyone else in my family. just a Tuesday. So, at about 11:40 p.m., I was tucked up in bed with my dog. Frankie lay across the room in her little bed. I've been trying my best to lower my screen time, so I just put my book on my nightstand and thought that my alarm hadn't somehow unset itself. It hadn't, but I had a Ring doorbell notification from about 15 or so minutes prior that I had missed. This wasn't all too concerning. My neighbors work all sorts of odd shifts, so my camera often picks them up all the time. I'd actually turned off the notifications about a month ago. They'd woken me up a few times, and they were honestly more annoying than they were useful. Anyway, sorry. When I pressed the notification, the app opened and I'd expected to see my neighbors, but no. I scanned the footage, thumb on the lock button, ready to get back to no screens. But then I saw him. On Tuesday, he didn't look like a him. He just looked like a figure standing about 20 feet behind the lamppost directly across the street from me. I squinted at the man for a second, but he didn't move a muscle. I'd presumed that he was just waiting for someone to pick him up or something. It didn't really matter, because he wasn't doing anything to impact me, so I left it. Put my phone down and tried to sleep. I went about the next day as normal, got Frankie and I bedbound for about 10:30 p.m. and drifted off to sleep around midnight. I woke up the next morning and checked my phone, saw another few Ring notifications and pressed one of them. The first one was my neighbor, but the second one, that was time-stamped around 1 a.m., freaked me out a little. It was similar to the notification from Tuesday. The footage showed what looked to me to be the same figure, only 10 feet closer than before. He didn't move for the duration that I stayed on the video, but as I studied the figure, it felt like a heated veil had been placed over my face, and I could feel my heartbeat in my fingernails. Was this the same man? Had the same man from Tuesday returned on Wednesday to stand closer to my home? I knew that both of the videos were dark and grainy, but I felt I'd benefit from comparing the two instances. If I watched them both again, I'd maybe be able to see if it was the same man, and I'd also maybe be able to see how long he'd spent just standing. The videos were gone. Not all of my Ring footage, just those two videos. I have plenty of footage of me, delivery people, neighbors, the standing man, and any opportunity to compare the two videos had disappeared. I spent most of Wednesday trying my best to prevent nightfall, but alas, it came. For the first time since I was a kid, I was frightened by the dark. I'd made an effort to try and keep myself upbeat and distracted, but I was dreading going to sleep. Actually, I wasn't really dreading going to sleep. I was certainly dreading what might be waiting on my phone when I awoke. It was a difficult night. Even with my little Shipu for protection, I'd managed to half convince myself that I was suffering from main character syndrome as a sleep aid. What made me think that the standing man had anything to do with me? I woke up between 3 and 5 times on Wednesday night. Each time I checked my phone for Ring notifications, nothing. Twice, I got up and checked the window, nothing. When I woke up on Thursday, I felt so weird. I felt heavy. I didn't want to check my phone. I spent the first 3 or 4 minutes in a make-believe world where iPhones and Ring cameras didn't exist. I reasoned that if I didn't have the Ring camera, I wouldn't even know this was happening. I'm only anxious because I'm aware. It didn't take long until I had to pop my blissfully ignorant bubble and check my phone. As expected, Ring notifications. I quickly clicked through the videos of my neighbors and found myself exactly where I didn't want to be, staring at a video of the standing man. This one was time-stamped around 3:15 a.m., about an hour after Wednesday's visit, and he was closer. There was something about him on Thursday that gave me a feeling that I can only describe as a déjà vu dipped in dread. It was a sort of intrinsic familiarity that I couldn't place. The standing man was positioned this time in the middle of the road, past the lamppost, in the middle of the road. At the rate he's progressing, he's halfway to my home. This time, I could see that the figure was a human silhouette, not a scary silhouette, necessarily. He wasn't 9 foot tall, his arms didn't extend to his calves, he wasn't even standing in a threatening stance. He was just there. I called off of work on Thursday, told them I've got the stomach flu. Luckily, my boss is a star and told me to take it easy until Monday, which is honestly a big help. My head is in no place for administration. I spent most of the day watching the clock. Maybe part of me thought that if I stared long enough, I might be able to stop the sunset. Frankie was feeling my stress too, bless her. She wouldn't leave me alone when it became apparent that my attempts at chronokinesis had been futile. She and I made our way to my bedroom, and she took place on the end of my bed. Her loyal presence made me feel safe enough to eventually fall asleep. I was expecting him to be there, to be on the street. But I knew my Frankie would wake me if there was anything else. There wasn't anything else. Nothing out of what had now become my ordinary. When I woke up on Friday, I delayed, checking my phone for a few minutes, and picked up my book. If nothing disturbed me last night, was there any point in checking the footage? I was laying in my bed with my dog and a book, blissfully unaware of whatever could have occurred outside my front door. I didn't want to know, but I had to know. I traced my finger up and down the spine of my book for a while, trying to distract myself from that harrowing feeling of recognition the last video left me with. Without even opening it, my book found itself in its space and my phone found my hand. I held my breath as I skimmed through footage of my neighbors going about their evening, and when the video I was waiting for came on, everything other than my phone ceased to exist. I remember this time stamp exactly. It was 4:32 a.m. It was lighter than all of the other times which paired with his position. Now on the pavement in front of my house, I could make out some detail. My eyes locked on to one thing. I could see that the standing man was wearing a t-shirt. The graphics glowed a bright white against the void black of his silhouette. I'd seen this t-shirt before, though my mother had designed it just before my dad died. My mum and her brothers made this cheesy shirt on Etsy. He was a big FU Fighters fan, so they'd had a shirt made up for him that had Everlong printed across the chest and 19782008 beneath. I know that sounds morbid, but we all knew that he had weeks left at best. There's a beautiful story I could tell about my family all pulling every string they could, and somehow managing to get the shirt signed by the Foo Fighters in time for him to be cremated in it. But that's a story for another day. My eyes were transfixed on the dates, 1978 to 2008. I tried to engage the more rational parts of my brain in order to find an explanation, but even that part admitted that there was no explanation to be found. I like to think I'm logical, skeptical. I'd be the first to argue that the odds of my cremated father standing outside my home in the twilight hours are essentially zero, but the chances of someone else doing this night after night, wearing his exact one-of-a-kind shirt, also nearly nil. They are my options, aren't they? My mind has wandered to a place where I think of scary stories I've heard before, of demons taking the form of someone you love. This is when I have to scale back my thinking, don't I? Just like the others, as soon as the video was off my screen, it was gone. This time, I felt an unexpected pang of sadness rather than confusion or fear. I couldn't help but sob. Big, ugly tears. It felt like him. The video felt like I was looking right at him. It wasn't the stinging sadness that comes after your brain plays a terrible trick on you and mistakes a stranger for a lost loved one. It wasn't like seeing someone who looks like him. The t-shirt brought it all into focus, but his height, his frame, his stance. It was him, as I sit here on Friday evening. The logical part of my brain now will not disengage. I can't help but do the maths. On Tuesday, he was 20 feet away. On Wednesday, 10. On Thursday, he was in the middle of the road. Today, my pavement. If he keeps moving at this pace, tomorrow, he'll be in my living room. Story 4 ends here and now. We enter the fog of Story 5. The alarm woke me shortly after the sun set, and I pushed away the sleeping bag that covered my body, cautiously sitting up, reaching for the light to my left side. I wrapped my fingers around it and found the switch with my thumb. The camper lit up and I squinted, reaching for the hard case that contained my glasses. Wiping them clean with the cloth I kept inside the case as well. I opened the canopy over the bed of my battered old 1984 truck. I stretched toward the sky and then stretched my legs as well, before walking into the building that housed the toilets. After relieving myself, I washed my hands and stepped back. Outside, I walked back to the truck and retrieved my pack of cigarettes and TCC vaporizer, taking a few hits off of the electronic device before tucking that into the key pocket of my jeans. I lit one of the little tobacco sticks and then opened the driver's side door of the truck and slipped behind the wheel, placing the key in the ignition, waiting for my phone to connect with the newer radio before backing out of the spot and leaving the rest area, turning right onto the highway. I continued on the lonely road into the mountains, both stubbing out the cigarette as I entered a series of tight curves that forced me to put both of my hands on the wheel. It took me another hour to reach a small town. I pulled onto the exit ramp, my stomach rumbling in protest to the fact I hadn't eaten anything since early afternoon the day before. I found a small restaurant with an equally tiny lot, though there were a few spots still open. I pulled into one of them and cut off the engine and stepped out of the old truck. I entered the building and was quickly shown to a table, the young server leaving a menu with me before moving away only to return with a cup for coffee and a little wire basket, with creamer and sweetener packets in it, along with a small glass shaker filled with real sugar. He returned again, a coffee pot in one hand, filling the ceramic cup while I browsed the breakfast dishes. It didn't take very long for me to decide on one of their breakfast sandwiches. The food didn't last much longer than the decision process. Had I paid the bill and included a decent tip, making my way back out into the lot, taking a few moments to walk a few laps around the blacktop, stretching my back again as well, and once I had limbered up a little, I got back into the truck and continued out onto the road again, heading westward through the mountains toward the valley where I had been born. I had been traveling for months and was daydreaming of spending time in a comfortable bed instead of the thin foam rubber pad I was using as a mattress as I pressed the brake. Approaching another series of curves, my engine roared as I pressed, the accelerator urging the rusty old truck up an incline. Lighting another cigarette, rolling down the window to let the smoke escape into the air outside. I drove until the sun began to set, and as my eyes began to close of their own accord, I cranked up the radio, keeping myself awake until I saw a billboard advertising a motel 20 miles away. I pushed the pedal toward the floorboard again and lit a cigarette. I had to slam on the brakes when a deer ran in front of me. my heart hammering in my chest as I swerved over the center line and back into my lane. There was no impact, but the adrenaline dump was making my hands shake as I pulled to the side of the road. I didn't kill the engine but sat there until the trembling in my fingers eventually stopped. I started to pull back onto the road but waited as a log truck rolled by. I waited, allowing it to get a decent head start on me before I entered the curves behind it. The moon was barely visible through the clouds, and the thick canopy only made it harder to see. I turned on the brights just in time to swerve again to avoid the jackknifed truck sitting sideways in the road. The hazard lights were flashing and the little orange triangles were already out as well. The lights on the trailer and coming from the cab casting everything in a strange yellow hue as I pulled over once again, pressing the button that activated my own hazard lights, then shifted the old truck into park. I reached under the seat to grab the large metal flashlight from underneath where it was strapped next to my first aid kit. I tested the heavy torch, flicking the switch forward, and the bulb came to bright life as I had expected. I stepped out, glancing around and straining to hear just in case the driver was hurt. Nothing but the sounds of insects and other forest animals filled my ears. The buzzing of wings and the chirruping song of crickets interlaced with the croaking of tree frogs and hooting of owls. "Hello," I called out, sweeping my light. Over the asphalt, the glimmer of broken glass reflecting back to me, the only response I got was the normal noises along with the quiet ticking of the truck behind me as the engine started to cool. I felt a moment of fear, but became convinced that the other driver was hurt and couldn't answer, so I did the only thing I could think of. I approached the truck, halting when I saw the state of the driver's side door. The thing looked mangled. As I moved my light over it, bent and dented, small punctures in the paint and metal. They looked almost like bullet holes, but that made no sense. There hadn't been enough time, and besides, no small caliber firearm had left some of those dents. I could smell something in the air. Familiar, but I couldn't place it until I saw the blood smeared and pooled in the seat. I realized what that was. Iron. I retched and stepped back. And for a moment the thought of getting the hell out of there crossed my mind, and in retrospect, I should have. Instead, I moved around to the front of the tractor trailer, where I saw more gore and clear impact damage. The grille of the semi-truck was nearly concave. I swept the beam of my light back and forth across the wrecked vehicle. The sound of a branch snapping behind me had me spinning round, heart leaping into my chest initially, breath freezing in my lungs. I felt a little silly when a buck poked its head out from behind the small shrub that still hid its body from my view. I began to relax, and the animal stepped out further, and I trained the flashlight on the chest of the creature. It looked to be smeared with mud or something. As the thing stepped forward again, I realized exactly what it was. Blood. Fear returned in a big way as the thing approached more. Clearly not spooked by me at all. I started to backtrack, and the thing continued to approach me. I didn't want to turn my back, but if I didn't, it was going to catch up to me for sure, or I was going to trip. I turned and began to run toward my truck, and thankfully made it before the buck behind me caught up, but not fast enough to get to me before I slammed the door. I was quickly shown how wrong I was, even as the thought that I was safe began to form in my mind. The thing rammed the door hard, and it dented but didn't buckle. I started to turn the keys. The thing that looked like a buck rammed those antlers into the tire, which exploded with a loud pop. I wouldn't be going anywhere. The thing stared at me through the window of the truck after puncturing my tire, and I got the feeling it was taunting me. When it started ramming the door again, I regained the ability to move and started scooting across the seat toward the passenger side of the truck. I mentally counted down from 3 to 0 as I scooted toward my exit, clutching the flashlight in one hand and the handle to the door in the other. I pushed hard and hit the ground running. The thing let out a noise that sounded like a bellow mixed with a grunt, but not entirely animal. There was something wrong about the vocalization. I began to run, blindly at first, into the trees, briars and other thorny shrubs tearing at my clothes and bare arms. I didn't stop, hearing the heavy hoofbeats of my pursuer. Every time I turned, it would move to one side or the other, as if it were herding me somewhere. As I ran, I tripped over something and sprawled to the ground. I lost my grip on the flashlight and it swept around in a half arc to shine behind me. I glanced toward what had entangled my ankle and caused me to fall. I wish I hadn't. I saw a disembodied arm and roughly a quarter of a torso. Ragged clothing clung to the ragged flesh, dried blood darkening the edges of the fabric where it had been shredded at the same time. I let out a cry before I could restrain myself. It wasn't as if I had escaped. I could hear that thing getting closer even as I struggled to my feet. Any head start I had gotten had been negated by the fall, and by the time I was running again, that buck, or whatever was chasing me, was closing in with every step. I was wearing down, but that thing didn't seem to be getting tired at all. That thought was followed by the feeling of antlers jabbing painfully into my lower back, pushing me forward. I stumbled and tried to maintain my balance, and while I stumbled, the animal headbutted me again. This time, when I sprawled out, the flashlight flew from my hand. I rolled onto my back instinctively as the creature moved to stand over me, and in that moment, I did the only thing I could think of. I made a fist and swung upward, my knuckles finding nothing but open air as it ducked backward. Even though my attack failed, it gave me the opportunity to scramble backward again, away from the beast. Its jaws parted and it let out another bellow, this one sending a chill straight to my bones. I managed to get to my feet as it took a step back and scraped at the ground with one of its front hooves, and that sound seemed off somehow as well, like bone on bone. I backed away slowly, not turning my back on the thing as it advanced toward me. I wasn't going to escape this way, having to carefully measure each backward step, but at least I would be able to see if the thing prepared to attack me again. I still wasn't fast enough to dodge when it did charge, closing the distance and lowering its skull almost impossibly fast. I felt the sharp pain under my ribs before I registered what was happening, body losing purchase with the earth, arcing upward before landing in a thorny bush. I didn't have time to feel the pain, forcing myself to move, even though simply breathing was painful. A beam of light caught my eye from the periphery of my vision. My flashlight. I scrambled toward it just as the thing that looked like a deer charged me again. This time its jaw opened and clamped down around the lower part of my leg. I let out another scream as the pressure increased and I literally heard my shin bone crack in the thing's mouth. I screamed out again and barely managed not to pass out from the pain. I kicked at the deer's skull, heel connecting solidly with the top of his head over and over again until it released my leg. I scrambled away and started moving again, trying to push myself backward. My ribs were definitely cracked as well, and I barely got myself free from the tangle of branches that ripped at my skin before the thing closed in on me once more. I kicked desperately with my good leg while using my arms to continue scooting backward. "Leave me alone," I yelled, knowing that it was pointless, and even speaking made pain flare through my torso. "Hello," came an incredulous voice. in the distance. "Help," I cried, just a moment before the dear thing bit down on my already injured leg again. This time, its blunt teeth closed around my knee joint. But before it could do too much damage, I heard the sound of a gunshot. The bullet whizzed past the thing, but that was enough to cause it to halt its attack on me. A beam of light focused on the blood-soaked animal, and there was another shot. It jerked to the side as the wet sound of the impact reached my ears, sending a spray of blood into the air that filled the area with a foul odor. The thing looked down at me, and then toward the direction the attack had come from, seemingly barely affected by being shot. My bleary eyes turned in. That direction, as well as the person with the rifle, advanced. The creature gave a sickening bellow, and then bounded off into the forest. The man with the lightened firearm approached me, and I almost broke down in tears out of sheer relief. The man knelt next to me and tried to help me stand, but after a few moments realized that wasn't going to work. He lifted me and carried me about 50 yards back toward the road, then set me down. "I'll be right back." I don't think it followed us, the older man said, then jogged down the slight slope and out of sight, his flashlight beam bobbing into nothingness. I barely clung to consciousness long enough to hear the siren of an ambulance wailing in the near distance. I blacked out only to wake up a few minutes later when the stretcher was loaded into the back of the truck. The transfer too painful to ignore even being in shock as I was. The paramedics questioned me, but I don't remember what I told them to. Be honest, I knew they wouldn't believe the truth. I don't know what that thing was, but I don't drive alone anymore. Story 5 ends here. Now, settle in for story 6. Does anybody know of some really good locks for windows? Because I've got a ... problem, to say the least. Moving out into this complete and utter devoidness of civilization might end up being my biggest mistake ever, and that's saying a lot. I've made a mess out of a lot of things in my life, but I didn't think I could fuck up simply finding a new place to live. At least not this badly. Hell, I think sleeping in my car under an overpass next to sewage and bums would have been preferable to this absolute violation of both my privacy and my sanity. All right, I'll quit being vague and get right to the point. As much as it disgusts me to even think about, something keeps coming through my window at night, and I don't know how to stop it. I first started noticing about a month after moving here, though looking back now, there were signs I should have caught on to since day one. Here being a small, secluded cabin halfway up a mountain with the nearest town 50 miles away, and the word town is doing a lot of heavy lifting. It was cheap, remote location, which is exactly what I needed after what happened near my last home. I don't want to get into it right now, but let's just say it was ... messy. Look. I know how it sounds, but I'm not trying to run away from anything. I just wasn't exactly eager to stick around and needed a place to clear my head. We all need that once in a while, right? Well, I didn't find that here. In fact, my thoughts are cloudier than ever, and I have a terrible feeling that a hurricane is coming. That's why I need your help. See, what I started noticing after living here for a month is that for some reason, the bedroom window right above my bed just would not stay shut while I slept. The first few weeks I had been keeping it open anyway, as this place has no central air and it gets extremely humid very quickly in this wooden hotbox. Then I would wake up almost entirely drenched most mornings and figured it was just raining throughout the night and getting all over me in the process. Now, I'm not so sure that was rain, so I resigned myself to being slightly less soaked when I woke up, closing the window at night and deigning to drown in sweat instead of polluted rainwater. However, that didn't seem to change anything. The first few mornings afterwards, I would awaken to that damnable dampness yet again, and curse myself for apparently forgetting to close the window before falling asleep. After all, it was still open every time I looked back up to check. I soon realized it wasn't as basic as a bad memory. Setting an alarm right before bed to remind me, I made sure I was shutting the window every night, right before crashing face first into my pillow and giving myself over to the sweet embrace of unconsciousness. But without fail, I would wake up, wet, angry, and increasingly worried about the still wide-open window above my resting place. Was I sleepwalking and determined to let my house flood eventually? That made at least some sense to me at first, especially because it only ever seemed to be me that was saturated. Not my bed, my blanket, the floor, nor the walls. Did I have some hidden anxiety welling up from deep inside, causing me to get up and open the window while sleeping, standing directly in front of it while the elements pelted me with droplets? That had to be it. It was the only logical thing I could think of at that point. But was it really raining every night? I brushed that thought aside, as I had never lived in this type of area before. Maybe mountain weather just involved a hell of a lot more precipitation than lower elevations. Regardless, I had to know what was going on with me. I looked for a cheap night vision camera and ordered it, with it arriving to my post office box in town within a week. Another week of enduring post-nocturnal moisture and an open window glaring down at me. I made the long drive down and back, taking note of a bunch of new, deep potholes along my path that I should probably fill in later. This was going to be the end of it. I kept telling myself, as I set it up pointed directly at my bed, far enough away to catch the window in frame, as well, oh how I wanted that to be true. I even would have settled for someone breaking in and dumping a bucket of piss on me every night, instead of what I actually discovered. That night, I followed my usual routine of closing the window as tightly as possible, triple-checking it before settling down into bed and soon drifting off. Without fail, the next morning I awoke feeling as though somehow an entire puddle had been dropped on top of me. And this only strengthened my resolve to watch what was happening every single night. For the last few months, hooking up the camera to my computer was easy enough. Accessing the file for last night's recording couldn't have been simpler. Actually watching the entire video from beginning to end, though, I found that nearly impossible. For the first hour or so, nothing was happening. Tossing and turning. A bit, but staying in bed right where I should be. A bit after the 2-hour mark, however, there was a curious sound, like glass tinking against itself. 3 times, right in a row, and slowly, my window began opening, seemingly on its own. It would have been better if it actually was on its own, because not even 30 seconds later, something came through the now open space. At first I couldn't even recognize what it was, but as it wound its way down over the windowsill, I could make it out piece by piece. Asterisk, asterisk, first fingers, long and slender, tipped with pointed obsidian claws, followed by a limb of pale, smooth skin, leading up into not one, but 2 separate elbows, one further up along the appendage than the other, finally ending with what I can only assume was a prodigious scaled shoulder. Unable to fully squeeze through the gap its spindly had entered, though not for lack of trying. I could hear the wood creak and groan as it pressed against the window frame with clear desperation. It was an arm, a fucking arm, massive and grotesquely inhuman, was reaching through my window and grasping for my still slumbering shape. entire length of it seemed to be dripping as it searched. It didn't take long to find me. After all, it had months of practice behind it now. As soon as it laid those clawed fingers on me, I couldn't help it. I looked away. I didn't want to see what it had been doing to my helpless form. I knew enough now, enough that every recess of my being wailed at me to leave now, and never look back. But I didn't leave, and I did look back. It was ... petting me, caressing me more accurately, dragging those horrible pallid digits from the top of my head all the way down to the bottom of my feet. Long, slow strokes, like one would give to a beloved pet that obviously craved attention somehow. This was worse to witness than simply doing harm to me. I'd rather it had thrashed me around or picked me up and yanked me right through the window instead. I sat there, looking on in awful wonder as it lovingly touched every single inch of me, the wetness sloughing off its fingertips onto my clothes and skin. Just as I was about to fast forward through and force myself to watch just how long it stayed there doing that, I caught a sound that still sends a shiver of despair, shooting through my entire body even as I sit here writing this. It was a gurgling purr, a longing and mournful cooing emanating from just beyond the shoulder. The worst part is, ... I recognized it. That terrible night, the one that sent me on this journey into madness, I heard it too. I haven't been entirely forthcoming with you. I mentioned this briefly before, hoping I wouldn't have to bring it back to the forefront of my mind by recounting all the gory details. I'll still spare you the worst of it. But for full context now, I think you should all know. Driving back to my previous house one night, the coastline on one side and a thick forest on the other, I hit ... something. It was about the size of a golden retriever, so I immediately assumed it was, in fact, a dog and got out to see just how bad the situation was. What laid in front of my now heavily dented fender, heaving and sputtering with that same purring gurgle, was no dog. God, I wish it had been a dog. It was scaly and pale, much like the arm that had come to haunt me nightly. Its own arms were a fraction of the length of this one, and they sprouted from a thick, stocky body, not unlike a cross between an alligator and a frog dog. Just looking at the beastly figure immediately made me want to jump back in my car and speed off, running it completely over in doing so to put it and me out of our misery. But I didn't, and now I seriously think I should have. What I did instead was pick it up, carry it into the woods, and lay it down there to suffer and die alone. I don't know why I did that. I guess I thought I was giving it a chance. Or, more realistically, I was just shoving it out of the way, out of sight, out of mind, like I do everything else in my life that I just desperately want to ignore. The greenish ichor spewing from its mouth and various wounds that got all over me should have told me it didn't have any sort of chance, anyway. And let me tell you, the stench of that stuff didn't come out for weeks. Sometimes I think I still catch a whiff of it every now and then. That's why I had to leave. I couldn't stand being in that area, knowing what I had done. And to be honest, it just straight up fucking scared me too. The mere existence of that thing obviously implied more like it. I didn't want to be anywhere near there to find out for sure. I think I found out now, anyway. So here I am, sitting alone in my cabin, typing out this plea for help. Not for anyone to come save me. No, I don't want another living soul involved in this mess. I just want a damn good lock for my window.